Explicative deleted.
Good morning. I'm splitting the difference between the clock in the room and the time on the computer. Good morning, everybody. As we're starting our meeting today, just wanted to make sure that people have seen. Three of us are here in person. We're going to be taking roll call votes throughout this. Commissioner Bertram is on our screen, and Commissioner Persky has not been able, we just haven't heard from him this morning. We understand he's someplace where Wi-Fi is pretty spotty. So once he comes on, we will do that. I'm going to go ahead and just have us do the call to order and our roll call to start with. When Joe gets in, we'll add him in, and then we'll go ahead and go to the moment of silence and the pledge. Sierra, you're going to be helping us today because Randy is not with us.
Yes, so Commissioner Lensmeyer.
Here.
Commissioner Notch.
Here.
Commissioner Bertram.
Here.
And Madam Chair.
Here. Thank you. This morning, as we are rising for our moment of silence and for the Pledge of Allegiance, would like us, in addition to getting ready for this meeting, think of those first responders who were laid to rest this last week, those Burnsville first responders who responded to a domestic situation and were killed in the line of duty, Officer Paul Elmstrand, Officer Matthew Rouge, firefighter paramedic Adam Finseth. Wounded also in action, Sergeant Adam Medlicott. Their thoughts today go to them, their families, their loved ones, their colleagues, and also to our own first responders. Please join us in the moment of silence, and again, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay, first order of business is approving the agenda. Dr. Williams or members, is there any changes to the agenda?
There are not, Madam Chair.
Okay. Then I'm looking for a motion to approve the agenda.
So move.
Second.
Great. A motion by Commissioner Lensman, second by Commissioner Notch. See no discussion. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Thank you. Consent agenda. I had checked with our two members that are participating remotely, and they did not have any items to remove from the consent agenda. Do either you, Commissioner Lensmeyer, or Commissioner Notch?
No, Madam Chair.
Okay, then I'm going to look for a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So move.
Great. Motion.
Second.
Great. Motion by Commissioner Lensmeyer, second by Commissioner Notch. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. And it sounds like Commissioner Persky is trying. Again, hopefully he will be able to join us very soon. Administration, Dr. Williams.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This item is an adjustment to the Housing Trust Fund Ordinance that was adopted in January, and it's a change in the governance a bit. In the original document that was adopted, we had the HRA director as a member of that board, and in addition being the administrator. And as we talked through this a little more, and thinking that it would be good to have a little more community input on it, we thought this was something that we probably should correct anyway. We really don't need that director having a dual duty. We really wanted them, that professional, to be the administrator to that board. And so that's what this change does. But it still appoints the HRA director, not Neil by name, but the HRA director by position as the administrator. And then, as you know, the HRA is going to administer the fund. The board, the Housing Trust Fund, is going to make those decisions, but the HRA is going to be the administrator. So that's the action, but it's a change to the ordinance. So you do need to hold a public hearing, and that's what's scheduled for today. And then you could take action on that if you so see fit.
Okay, thank you. Good description of that. Okay, members, so the adjustment proposed would be removing the HRA director as an official board member, but he would still be, or future one would be administrating it, with adding one more member. We give more members of the public an opportunity to participate. Is there any discussion on this?
I'd just add one last thing, and because
Before we go to the
Mr.
public
Fortier isn't here, but obviously we've discussed that with him and the HRA board,
Right,
and they're in
right.
concurrence. So
And I was going to say, we know who the two HRA board members will be. And before we go to do you want to say anything before we go to the public hearing, Commissioner Bertram, or do you want to wait until after we're done with the public hearing?
No, I'm fine.
Okay, all right, great. All right, then we'll go ahead and open the public hearing. All right, our public hearing to go ahead and modify, consider amending the Housing Trust Fund Ordinance and to take action on amending the ordinance to add a member appointed by the county board. Is there anyone wishing to speak on this? Is there anyone wishing to speak on this change? Is there anyone wishing to speak on this change? Dr. Williams, was there anybody who communicated via email or some other way?
it was not.
Okay. All right, with that, I'll close the public hearing. All right, members, we have a proposal in front of us. Is there any discussion or a motion?
Madam Chair, I'll make a motion to accept the amendment.
Okay,
The
great.
amendment.
Commissioner Bertram.
Madam Chair, I'll second it. And then I just have a question on
Excellent.
applicants. And I know we've got a lot of questions, so maybe after the vote,
Okay.
I'd like to have Mike give us an
Right,
update.
just a little bit of
the
an update on the process and how we're going to make sure that others know that there's an opportunity to expand. Yes, excellent question. Okay. Seeing no discussion, all in favor of amending the ordinance as proposed signify by saying aye. We'll be doing the roll call, so go ahead.
Commissioner Notch,
Aye.
Commissioner Lensmeyer,
Aye.
Commissioner Bertram,
Aye.
and Madam Chair.
Aye. All right. Dr. Williams, can you tell us a little bit about where we're at with letting people know that this is an opportunity? And,
Yep.
and clearly now that we've expanded it, we'll have to give them some more opportunity.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, and when we proposed this change, we left that application period open, thinking of, just as you stated, that, and we didn't have too many anyway, as I recall, but after we added, or considering adding this, we've left that open, and I believe it's still open today. I'm thinking that we could make appointments at the first meeting in April, if that seems okay to the board. That give us a little more time for recruitment, and if you have recruitment to do, and we'll continue to advertise it on, on the website and Facebook and our normal social media things. And hopefully, again, bring that to you in your
Right.
first meeting in April.
So knowing that some members of the public listen to this and that we've got other ways that we're reaching out, if you're interested in being on this Housing Trust Fund Board, go to our website to complete its very brief application. We are interested in making sure we're getting a wide array of applications on that. Commissioner Bertram, any other questions on that?
Madam Chair, Mike, when are we going to make the commissioner appointments to that board? At the same time we do the public members?
Madam Chair, Commissioner
Dr.
Bertram,
Williams.
that's what I assumed. But
Okay,
I mean, that
yes.
would
Okay.
obviously
That
be
would
up to the
make
board.
sense.
But I thought April 1st, we could fill the board so it can get about its work.
Sure.
Right.
And then Madam Chair,
Commissioner Bertram?
just one last question. So the interviews, if we get, let's say we get 8 applicants, you're gonna come up with a format of how to potentially narrow that down from 8 to 4 or something. I assume we're not gonna interview all of them, or is the intent to interview all applicants?
Dr. Williams?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Bertram, the most recent new board appointments we were making when we had a number of applicants to a new board was the Airport Commission. And what we did there was the board was able to have a discussion at the board meeting. Because the applicants are not finalists, you do not have to release the names at that point. And then you would narrow the field from at that point. And at that point, you could either, make the appointments, or if you want to do some interviews, you can do some interviews.
And Commissioner Bertram, with that, we have done a few times where we've gotten it down where we've had a couple of members who have done interviews with administration and then brought back recommendations. So it would seem like we ought to at least be able to get it narrowed down the next time, and then we can decide whether or not we're doing interviews. So please be thinking about that. That's a good thing we can kind of figure out together what makes the most sense. Anybody else? Anything else? Okay. Well, thank you. Thank you for the work on that. I think it's going to be a good mix. All right, we're going to move on to environmental services now. I know we've got two people. We've got both Shelley Benson and Angie Berg from Environmental Services coming to give us some updated information about solar development. I think you've gotten a variety of questions from many of us that you will hopefully be able to share information with us about. So I'll turn it over to the two of you.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the board. Shelley Benson, Environmental Services Director.
Oh, wait, excuse me, really quickly. I just want to, for the record, let the record reflect that Commissioner Persky has been able to join us. Commissioner Persky, welcome. Sorry that took a little bit for you to get in. We're glad you're here. We are just about to start environmental services.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I'm pleased to get on here. Janet works some magic, and we're connected now from Spain. So
that's great. And recognizing Wi-Fi can be a little spotty at times. We're glad to have
yes,
you here.
Yes, it was a bit difficult, but we got it.
Thank you, and thank you to our staff. Okay, Ms. Benson.
Madam Chair, Shelley Benson, Environmental Services Director, and Angie Berg will go through what you received in your packet related to kind of the history of where we have been with solar, the activities, the progression, the evolution of solar in Stearns County. So I will hand it over to Angie.
Good morning, Commissioners. Angie
Ms.
Berg, Environmental Services. On February 6th, the board, we discussed having a public hearing for your next meeting for a potential change to an interim use permit. And so ahead of that, we discussed at your February 6th meeting about doing some discussion today. And so as you saw in your board packet, I put together for the visual people of the world, kind of a timeline of solar starting in 2008. And I'm not going to go through and read all of this. I'll just hit a couple highlights and obviously answer any questions. But in 2008 is when we started talking about solar. That is when we adopted a relatively new comprehensive plan at that time. And then as a lot of people remember, St. John's University was the first solar farm in the state of Minnesota, really in the upper Midwest at the time. And so that was back in 2009. And then from there on, a lot of you were around and remember kind of the progression. The county commissioners have enacted 5 different renditions of solar farm or solar garden ordinances since then. The last change was in 2021, and that was after there was discussion of a moratorium, which didn't occur at the time. And what the board did in 2021 was allow the first 1 megawatt on a parcel to be permitted, which is administratively permitted by Environmental Services, and the second megawatt on a property to be an interim use. So prior to that, prior to 2021, any solar farm that was permitted was done by conditional use. And conditional use, as many of you know, those run with the land. They're not tied to particular timeframes. And so I think there was maybe some misunderstanding or some discussion needed to be had today on all of the permits that we've granted over the years, all except for one, has been a conditional use permit. So just kind of setting the stage for that. Obviously, there's been change to legislation, which is out of the commissioner's control. The first was in 2013. That's when the Community Solar Garden Program went into effect. And then there were some changes just last year. The big one was the state of Minnesota being 100% renewable by 2040. And there was a few other tweaks to the solar garden statute. Now, the statute allows to go back up to 5 megawatts per project instead of 1. We haven't seen any of that yet, but potentially we will. And the legislature also did put a cap on solar gardens allowed per year. And I thought that was interesting. I didn't realize that until I was working on this project. So with that, what I did
Excuse
is,
me, Ms. Berg, would you say more about that?
sure, so what the legislature did is say that per year, so from 2024 to 2026, they're only allowing, the legislature would only allow, in this case, Xcel Energy to accept 100 megawatts of community solar in the state of Minnesota. And then in 2027 to 2030, so then the next 3-year period, the cap would be 80 megawatts, and then 2031 and thereafter is 6 megawatts. So why they did that, I'm not sure, other than maybe to slowly phase out some of the community solar. I'm not really sure, but I found that that was interesting to note. The other information in your packet, again, I don't want to go through it all. I did a lot of different comparisons to where we fall with other counties, both on community solar and on state permitted solar. And just as a reminder, anything that's greater than 50 megawatts, that's permitted by the Public Utilities Commission, and counties are preempted from local control. Anything less than 50 megawatts is under the county or city purview. So I gave you everything in the past that we've ever talked about with solar in different exhibits throughout the years, just as a reminder. And then lastly, just to touch on our relationships and how we communicate with townships, in the process of both amending ordinances. As you know, townships do receive both paper notice and notice in an email of any potential changes to land use and zoning ordinance. And then also for interim uses, they would, or conditional uses, both, they would receive paper notice and email notice. And then lastly, for any administrative permit, so anything that would be permitted now by staff, the township, there's a signature spot on the application where a township has to sign saying they're acknowledging the application for the solar garden. So just to touch on that, as you know, or I've been emailing you a lot in the last couple of years, but right now we do have 2 townships with moratoriums. One is Zion and one is Lake Henry. Both of them expire in September of '24. And then we have 4 townships that now prohibit solar. But for all of those townships and anybody, any township with any land use concern, we're always out there. We're always willing to help them, talk to them. You probably saw the email yesterday. We do a quarterly newsletter, bordering on harassment at some point with my communication with townships. So with that, this is discussion, so I'll just sit back and see if you have any questions.
So before we go to that, just to make sure I'm understanding, I hope you all will give me some grace to ask a couple questions, and then we'll open up to everybody. Kind of working backwards, the state now has some limitations, which would be interesting to get more information. We have some limitations. Townships can choose to go with a prohibition, a moratorium. They can do something that's more stringent than ours, and then kind of goes to the individual landowner. I guess that's really where it starts, is do they want to do something like this? For the public, we do not promote, nor are we discouraging solar. That's something about landowners. We're just about the land use piece of this. But we have, has it worked effectively at this point then, that every application you're seeing has a township signature on it, or it stops, right? Is that what happens?
Madam Chair, correct, right. There would only be, it wouldn't go any farther. And we actually had this conversation on a different matter with our county attorney's office. And so it wouldn't go any farther if the township didn't sign the application. And we've never been, I say, forced to have to make that call on what we would do if they didn't sign. But we certainly wouldn't grant the permit administratively in that situation.
Okay. So it sounds like we at least, I don't know if it's fully effective or not, what we had hoped in terms of townships feeling like they can be in the driver's seat, that we've seen some of that. So we're seeing a variety of decisions being made by townships, boards. What kind of technical assistance is available for either the property owner or the township more specifically?
Madam Chair, in terms of the township, our office would provide zoning support, right? So, I mean, if townships have questions about connection, interconnect agreements and things out of the zoning purview, that would be up to them to find assistance on that. But zoning, we would assist them with giving them this information, helping them understand what other counties have done, what other townships done, what the state has done, what they might see. As far as property owners go, all of the same. Usually, by the time we talk to a property owner, they've already signed a contract. And I know years ago, that was very controversial back when there was a lot of property owners signing wind contracts. We had tens of thousands of acres under wind contracts, and people don't have to consult with the county before signing a contract on their property. But if anybody wanted to, I'd be happy to have a conversation about how zoning falls into that. Obviously, the legal part of their contract, we would guide them to talk to an attorney.
Okay, I appreciate you answering those questions. Commissioner Lensmeyer, do you have any questions? Commissioner Notch, or
Maybe
comments?
Just a clarification, Madam Chair. So Angie, you mentioned the state language has those caps. Is that specific to a definition of a solar garden versus a solar farm or a solar whatever?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Notch, specific to solar farms, or solar gardens per the Community Solar Garden Program.
That's where the subscription?
Correct.
Okay.
Right, so the big systems that you're maybe hearing or seeing about in Benton and Sherburne, that is not this. That's not a community solar garden program subject to the subscription. That's a different state system, so they would not be subject to those caps.
Okay.
And then we're going to get to both Commissioner Bertram and Commissioner Persky, but you reminded me of something else. In some ways, the word community solar garden is a misnomer at this point. It really is about size. It's not really about like my little township, not township, sorry, my townhome association deciding we are going to get a solar garden and share it. It is really more, at least from what we've seen, more with contracts with Excel. It is not one farm that's giving, sharing energy from this with their neighbors. It really is more of a size versus something else. Because back in 2008, we thought there would be something different than, things change. But just, is that correct? Even though they might call it community?
Sure, so Madam Chair, I'm probably the least aware of how the legislature wanted to set this all up. But the whole premise behind Community Solar Garden was that if you live in town, you don't have room for solar, but you want to contribute to a solar, you want to pay into a solar garden, you'd have that opportunity. So some states do this, some states don't. Minnesota is one of the biggest proponents of community solar. So I think what you'd have to understand and read is the whole premise behind community solar. It was never intended to serve your neighborhood. The transmission of the solar garden was never assured to be to certain people, and certainly not to the people who subscribed. That was the whole premise.
So for example, once upon a time, we signed, my husband and I signed up for their dollar for wind. What I'm hearing you say is it fits within that. I do know that at the very beginning, there was some hope that there could be neighborhoods that would be being able to band together and do this. That I don't think that really ever took off. Right. And instead it became more what we're seeing now. And it really, at least, and Joe, I'm coming, I promise, as it relates to those that might come through us, it really is about size. Right. And so it's not about anything else. Okay, sorry, Commissioner Persky. Thank you for your patience.
Okay, no, I was just going to say, it's my understanding that if you are in a county, you can apply with Excel for a reduction in your rate by joining a community solar garden. And then that also applies to any abutting counties to Stearns County. So that was the policy in the past, but I don't know if that has changed now with the new legislation.
That's a good question. I'm not sure what they might have done. Do you know, Commissioner?
No.
Okay, you might have a different question. I don't know. Does either Ms. Benson or Ms. Berg know that?
Madam Chair, I don't. If and when the board would ever want someone from Excel to come and talk about the Community Solar Garden Program, they would be far more educational
Sure.
than my little piece of
That
knowledge.
is very fair,
So-
and we certainly have had them here before if members would like that. It's a very good question, Joe. I'm not sure what the current status of that is either. My understanding is that if someone has it, though, well, I won't even get into the net metering because maybe it's all changed now, too. Commissioner Notch?
Yeah, I just was going to make a comment similar to that. You know, some of you might not have been on the board, but a few years back, we had the group come to the county and do a presentation if we wanted to participate or subscribe. I don't know if Mike was here at the time, but, you know, we had a presentation if we wanted to subscribe to community solar. I think it was going to be east of here, you know, and then you get the bill credit and such. And then the other thing I was just going to make a comment on, so when I sat on the Stearns Electric Board, they've had this, I forget what exact, it was when one of the first wind farms went in the Buffalo Ridge down in
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
southern part of Minnesota. It was the same thing. You could subscribe and say, I'm part of wind energy if you wanted to, and then you got that notice on your bill. So, you know, that dynamics, I don't know how much that's gonna change going in the future, you know, when it comes to, like you said, community solar where you subscribe. And are you saying, Angie, these limitations are that type
Correct.
of project? Okay.
So there.
So they
sounds like
build it
might-
somewhere else and then you can
Right.
subscribe wherever you live. Gotcha.
Almost sounds like they might be looking at larger projects then. Commissioner Bertram?
Thank you, Madam Chair. A couple questions. Who decides, Angie, in Minnesota, where those different limitations of the 100 megawatt, 80 megawatt, 60 megawatt within the state, who decides where and who gets that?
Madam
Ms. Burke.
Chair, Commissioner Bertram, the answer is I don't know, because currently there's no application submitted to Excel under these guidelines at this point. They're still finishing up their last batch of applications, if you will. That would be another question for Excel. When I read the statute, it doesn't say where they're allotted. So I don't know if there's going to be policy behind that. I don't know if it's so many regions are going to get so many megawatts. My thought is we'll never really have a say in that because, again, Excel is the one to decide which of these projects move through and get approved.
Might be great,
Madam
even if
Chair.
it's in an email, get some more information for us. Commissioner Bertram?
Right, Madam Chair, that's what I was going to ask. The questions that were asked before mine, if we don't know, if we could just get a follow-up through an email, that might suffice at the beginning, but I'd like to know that. And is it the Department of Commerce that regulates this, Madam Chair, or who regulates solar?
Madam
Ms.
Chair,
Berg, isn't it
Commissioner
the
Bertram,
PUC?
the Public Utilities Commission is the permitting authority. Department of Commerce is the administrative arm.
So they probably would know, okay. And Madam Chair,
Commissioner Bertram?
when Angie, when did the applications, when did the board approve that staff would do the 1 megawatt, if it was a 1 megawatt solar?
Right, that was 2021, if I recall correctly.
And
It's in
what
the
month?
Packet,
That's in the timeline.
yeah, it's in the
I missed
timeline.
it. Well, then I missed it, so
Yeah,
humor
that's-
me and tell me when is that what
2021.
month and what?
If you look
and
on
what-
page 98,
It doesn't have the month.
what, pardon?
I think he's wondering what month.
Oh, what month?
98, it just says 2021.
Right, it was spring, sometime around now, but I don't remember. Do you have that in front of you, or can you get that back?
Madam Chair, I can get that. I
would be
can
good.
try to get that while you're visiting on other topics.
No, and it's not timely. I was just curious when, because when that happened, my understanding was that the townships were not notified and they did not require the signature. Was that always in place or did that happen later?
Ms. Berg?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Bertram, so the construction site permit applications have always had a signature for townships. And so that wasn't anything new. I think maybe where it could have gotten confusing is that there wasn't some additional or special step just for solar. It's for any land use application needs a township signature.
And others might have more recollection. I recall that was part of what we talked about at the time we did this, was the importance of the township, that they were going to need to be signing off on it, which does give them really the say before we even
And
get to
Madam
our
Chair-
steps. Yes, Commissioner Bertram.
Madam Chair, I can tell you that there was definitely, and I did not know that, and I can tell you that a lot of townships, I don't think understood that if they didn't sign it, that application would not be considered. So that's why I'm asking the clarification, even now moving forward. So again, my understanding is if someone makes a application for a 1 megawatt solar site and it's going to be referred to staff for their approval, if the township doesn't sign off on it, it won't go any further than that.
Ms. Berg, that's my understanding. Can you confirm that?
Madam Chair, that is also my understanding, but I will also say that if we were ever presented with that problem or with that situation, Shelley and I would need to discuss that with our county attorney's office.
Well, my guess is, I think I could say this out loud, is that I think the sense of the board at that time, and certainly now, would be it should stop. It needs to go to the township. Commissioner Notch.
Maybe just to add on to that, I remember my days on the township board. Part of it is, you looked at that application, but you also looked at the landowner who it really affected. And basically, if it was their wishes, when I was on the township board, when zoning started in 2000, the townships had to sign all those requests for permits. And I remember we didn't have planning and zoning in our township. And after a couple of years, we said, it's kind of crazy for us to sign all these if the county is making a decision. Let's not hold up the process for them another 30 days. And we pretty much just said, go ahead, and however the county zoning is, that's what we'll accept. And I know this has been a change. It's always been there, but on my days in the township, we pretty much, if it was a resident and it was a request and it fit, we signed off on them.
And members, Chad May is coming up. I think he's got something he wants to add, which is really good. It's good for us to have somebody from our county attorney's office shed additional light on this.
Yes.
Welcome.
Thank you, Commissioners. As it relates to the township signing off, we did come across this issue. Essentially, the townships have original jurisdiction for zoning. They do allow us the ability to administer that through MOUs. In a scenario in which they've allowed us to administer zoning through MOU, if they were to do something inconsistent with our zoning regulations, we would have to consult with them, because essentially they'd be taking back zoning administration for solar specifically.
And Mr. May, we clearly, when we went through all of this, sometime in the last several years, we, as a board, have said if a township wants to be more narrow, wants to take it on, we're letting them. So for the public, or maybe to remind us, will you refresh our memories about how that works?
Yeah, so I would, in those scenarios, I would work with the township attorney and talk to them regarding what that means. Because again, if they're ceding to us the ability to administer zoning under the MOU, but they then, because in certain circumstances they'll do that, but they may keep several areas of zoning for themselves. So essentially be taking that back, and then all solar application or solar zoning would have to go through them.
So we do have a few, which that's what the decision they've made.
Right, and we even have some currently in which they passed an interim ordinance, moratorium on solar, which then created the same scenario where it's a interim taking back of their ability to regulate solar. So it would be, the burden would be on them at this point and not the county.
So if a person in that township comes with an application and staff knows this is a township that has made that decision, it would be communicated back that under what the township has decided, that we would not go any further. They would need to go back to, if anything changed with the township, that they should go talk to the township.
That's exactly correct. Yep.
And that there is either a moratorium or full stop?
Correct.
Okay.
Thank you.
Wait, you don't go away, because I'm going to guess there's some questions. Commissioner Bertram.
Madam Chair, Mr. Mee, so again, I've heard two different scenarios here. One, if the signature is not on the application, it stops there. You've just said something different, and I just want to, if I don't understand it, I'm not the smartest guy on the block, but if I don't get it, there's other people that won't. If you wouldn't mind just kind of specifying in writing what it is. So if a township does sign, then it would go to staff and they'd go through their approval. If a township does not sign, what happens? And I'd like to have that in writing, so I don't want to prolong this at all. And then the other question would be the applications for like the big solar sites that were always like the 50 megawatt. I assume that doesn't play into this new legislation, if I understood Angie right, and after reading the background.
Ms. Berg, because they can't see you, so.
Madam Chair, Commissioner Bertram, the answer is correct. The legislation that has the cap is only on community solar gardens, not on solar farms that are greater than 50 megawatts. And
Madam Chair, Angie, what's the tax, Commissioner Persky has been working on this. What's the tax update on those sites?
That all changed last year.
Madam Chair, I don't know the answer to that.
We can have our property services folks send us it, but that changed to commercial after the last legislation. So why don't we get an email from property services updating us about that too? It's good to have all that in one place. And Commissioner Bertram, just really quickly, is when we talk about wanting to make sure people are not confused and townships are not confused, would one of you mind just helping us understand when and how? Is it through the newsletters? Is it on an individual basis? How do the townships get this information? Recognizing that once they've made a decision, they may not come back until they make a different decision. So whoever would like to respond to that.
Madam Chair, so a couple things. First, I want to be clear that not every single township has elected to sign off on construction applications. So Commissioner Bertram, I can get you a list of those that have, or the entire board. If I'm in a township,
if you're going to give it to one, you need to send it to all of them.
if I'm in a township who has elected not to sign off on applications and a solar farm comes to our office, that gets processed like any other permit without their signature. So I just want to be clear, that might have been why there was some misunderstanding of the township signature.
So the way we had developed the process, or at least the way I thought we developed the process, was that townships were reminded of their opportunity about zoning, and it could even be just for solar. And several of them have taken steps to be specifically doing solar, or they may have already decided they want to be doing planning and zoning. In both of those cases, I think I'm hearing you say, those situations, you're looking for a signature, but the ones where there hasn't been, they have kept planning and zoning with us. It's not going in front of them because they've decided they don't want to put further limitations at this point, or limitations on solar. Am I saying that right?
Not really.
Okay, tell us how that is, because we
okay.
need to make sure it's clear for people who are living in different townships, as well as for the township supervisors.
The townships are clear on what they want to sign off on, because they tell us, let's say we're in Linden, we have a list of all of our townships, 1 through 37, and they have get an opportunity to say, if someone's building a shed, or someone's building a solar farm, someone's building a feedlot, doesn't matter what they're building, and the county's the permitting authority, they tell us whether or not they want to sign off on the application. But it's all or nothing. There's no picking and choosing. If you want to approve solar, look at solar, then you're looking at the sheds. Then you're looking at everything. So if they elect to take on their own planning and zoning, like Paynesville did for a while, Avon did for a while for solar, then they're the permitting authority, and Stearns County is not involved at all.
For everything.
For solar.
Right, that's what I thought. I thought it was just solar, but then something you just said made me think
For
what
the
I heard was
applications.
for everything.
Yeah.
Because we've allowed them to for solar, whether they are for the other things or not.
Yes, townships can pick and choose what they want to permit. they cannot pick and choose what they want to sign off on an application
Right.
for that the county. That's just that's just the easiest way for them to understand and the easiest way for our staff to understand.
So perhaps to help us and to help us answer questions when we get asked, can you just send us an email that helps us see what that looks like, giving us an example perhaps of and maybe members are going to want additional things, but a township that has decided they don't want to be doing any planning and zoning, somebody who has chosen to do some modification of this, and somebody for whom is taken out, just so that we can better understand and see and explain, right? Because what we just have gone through has taken quite a few minutes. Even if at least in my head, I don't think it's all that complicated, but as we talk about it, it's hard to explain. Commissioner Notch, did you have, I wasn't sure if you had something. Okay. Okay, Commissioner Lenzmeyer?
As long as we've got a record of the process that we've gone through, and I'm listening to this and I'm thinking, well, this isn't a formal process. And then my second thought was, does it have to be? As long as we've got some indication that the locality has been included, at least in the information loop, would that do it?
Do you understand?
Yeah, go ahead, Ms. Benson.
Madam Chair, I think, so if I'm hearing you correctly, Commissioner Lenzmeyer, you're saying, is there a way for us to make sure that they're included in the
Somewhere in the process.
somewhere in the process as a township?
Yeah.
We tend to be, like, if you're submitting a permit application, then it's all in or all out. But can we do that? I think there are ways for us to think about that. We do, at the semi-annual meeting, always say, hey, you as townships, remember you have those rights to talk about your MOUs, et cetera. We do, through the newsletter, we try to make them be informed. We go out to meetings. I think we can look at if there are other options, and maybe solar has a little different twist to it. We can certainly consider those things and then have that conversation.
Commissioner Lenzmeyer, anything else with that? I think it'd be really helpful to get that information from the state too about where they're really going and what does this mean for us. Commissioner Bertram.
Madam Chair, just in closing, obviously township meetings, by the way, are March 12th for everybody. Really encourage people in townships to attend those. Those are really important. But when it comes to, there was a comment made about property right, owner rights. Certainly, we can't be naive in knowing that there's issues. It's not just the landowners that's applying, it's the neighbors, it's the township, and that's why we've had moratoriums, and that's why we've had outright prohibition of solar farms. So it's a lot bigger and deeper than just one applicant. And I think I hope we all see that, because otherwise we wouldn't be having all these discussions. I was surprised, and again, I've been involved with this on the planning commission level and on the county board level now, that only 17% of Excel is in the county. So but the bulk of the county, that's why we're not hearing it from a bulk of the county, because Excel is not servicing those areas. But in areas that they are, Painesville Township, for example, 17 solar sites, that's a whole different issue than one township with one site. And so I think we have to be sensitive to that. And townships, there's a lot of small townships, as we all know, and we sometimes, I think, have a fair or an unfair expectation of them. They are limited in staff and the depth of a lot of these things, and we do need to hold their hand in walking through all this. And if you look at the county, the counties 1 through 5, Stearns, Chisago, Sherburne, Dakota, Rice. I mean, obviously there's a huge discrepancy, and then the entire list from all 87 counties, we're certainly at the top of every list. So, it's a hotbed for a lot of reasons. And yes, we do have to be vigilant, in my opinion, in being aware, empowering residents, empowering townships, that this is all going on. So I think this is a good discussion. Certainly, with a lot more answers and direction, we can move forward.
Commissioner Lensmeyer.
Two things. 17%, Jeff. Is that by population? Is that by geography? Is that, what are you basing that on? And in addition, we're doing the best we can to develop a process that's one size fits all. It doesn't quite work, but we'll do the best we can. Yes, we want folks to know that there is a process and how it works, but at the same time, maintain an element of flexibility.
And Madam Chair, Commissioner Lensmeyer, by the way, you look good sitting in my seat. That I've never looked that good, so good. Thank you for.
Well, when you get a chance to rotate again, you'll be able to see that. The 17%, my understanding is geography, because the vast bulk of the east side is all XL. So it'd be good to see that at some point. Clearly, XL has made decisions along where their power lines are and wherever their substations are. That impacts that. And then we're obviously, not by much, but in the top 5 counties with solar gardens. But when we look at the bigger projects, we really don't have many of them, probably to the relief of some or many.
17%, can we loop back to that? Is that by geography, population?
It's geography.
Madam Chair, Commissioner Lensmeyer, it's on page
Right.
99.
So Ms. Burke, can you enlighten us? Because I know we just read it off of the page. The page
Yes,
is
packet page number
99.
4. It's 17% of the land area in Stearns County is in Excel territory.
Okay.
Yep.
Right. Steve, excuse me, Commissioner Notch.
And Madam Chair, just for clarification, Jeff, you mentioned there were 17 solar in Paynesville Township. Is that correct?
I believe that's what it is. Angie could for sure say.
I
It's
just
more
need
than
that
one, I can
information.
tell you that.
Yeah,
I
that
think it
seemed,
was less
That's,
than
I
that.
think it's less than that. I was gonna say, I got an
I sent you an
email.
email.
Right, I'll go look. So, hold on a sec. Because I was trying to get a handle on, because I remember when you said that, Commissioner Bertram, was like, holy cow, that's a big number.
Looking for the sent emails.
Madam
Well, it's
Chair,
more
I
than one.
have,
Oh, yep.
I have 9 megawatts
Megawatts.
in Paynesville Township and 6 permitted sites.
It's amazing how
9
fast it can seem like a lot, though. I always think about County Road 8 in Sherburne County, that feel like all I'm doing is driving by solar sites. Commissioner Bertram.
Madam Chair, Angie, so the 9 and the 6 are added, or just explain that?
Madam Chair, Commissioner
Ms. Burke.
Bertram, so there's 9 megawatts total permitted by Stearns County or Paynesville Township in Paynesville Township. And that is comprised of 6 total sites.
And now there's
Got
a
it.
prohibition, so there will not be any more.
That's correct.
And then
Commissioner
the 50 megawatt, I assume you didn't include that one, the state permitted, the PUC permitted one.
10 megawatt, right?
Madam Chair,
Ms. Burke.
Commissioner Bertram, so the real confusing part of the larger 10 megawatt solar project that was permitted by the state, the Aurora project, is that it's only 10 megawatts in Paynesville, and it's only 10 megawatts in Albany, and then it's 10 megawatts 9 other places in the state of Minnesota. And so what the legislature did is they had special legislation slipped in at the end of a session, in some people's opinion, that basically said they're allowing this one project to be distributed at over, in this case, it was over 100 megawatts. We were 2 of those. So we had no control over that 10 megawatts in Paynesville Township.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, and
Commissioner
I agree
Bertram.
with that. I agree with that, and Commissioner Notch, along with the 50 megawatt, the ones that have been permitted, there were several that were denied, and then several that attempted to go through the process. So maybe the 17 included all of those, but again, I guess we can split hairs on numbers, but the point is it's more than one, and it's a lot, and it led them to do the moratorium. So as I've said before, too much of a good thing may be too much of a good thing. So the people in Painesville, and of course the city of Painesville, which we don't do anything with, are going to have two of them, two additional ones. So in that area, obviously, it's a hotbed, which is very different than St. Rose. And again, that's when we really need to, I think, pay attention to something's going on here and how much of a good thing is too much of a good thing.
Commissioner Notch.
And I would have to make the assumption that's based on Excel's territory and substation capacity and whatnot, all because, you know, like you said, only 17% of the geography is in Excel's territory. So obviously, you know, they're going to consolidate these where they can attach to the system. Yeah, so that's all I have for that.
And to answer
other
that, Madam
questions?
Chair,
Go ahead, Commissioner Bertram.
Madam Chair, to answer that, the only reason, I mean, what solar industrial sites look for is a substation. And Excel built that huge substation. For 2 years, the county went through the permitting for Geronimo wind farms. And that there's going to be a major wind farm between Lake Henry and Painesville. Excel ramped up, built that big substation, and then as things go, they didn't get the funding, Geronimo, and they backed out. Well, now Excel had this huge substation. Solar industrial sites saw that, and they just swarmed in like a bunch of bees on honey. And so that's what this is all about, and that's why there's so many in that area. So again, right or wrong, puts a heck of a burden on a very small area of the county.
Well, and it sounds like the prohibition that the township has put in, the moratorium that Painesville Township has put in, the moratorium as Lake Henry is figuring it out, probably have made a difference in that. And the city, as you pointed out, is a different entity. There's really nothing we can do about that, nor can we do anything about what the PUC does. Totally makes sense of that concern, but at this point, unless it's in the city or it's very large, none will be coming in there. Okay, Commissioner Lansmeyer, did you have anything else?
I was going to, just thinking out loud, in addition to the locations that exist that Jeff referred to, I'd like an opinion, not an extensive study, but are these taking place on lower valued land? Is this one tool that property owners could use to get that property to be more productive? Just an opinion. I'd be just curious. And then beyond that, Jeff, which finger were you holding
Oh,
up?
he's doing his index. He's fine.
The right
We can't give
finger.
him too
Thank-
much grief.
Thank
He
you
can't
for
even see
checking.
us, really.
I can see you very well.
All right, good. Good chuckling. Commissioner Notch and Angie, unless Steve's able to answer that question, maybe you could include that in the email
Got
as
it.
well. Steve, Commissioner
My
Notch.
question or comment was, I noticed Albany Township, you know, has, you know, solar except for certain sections. So I'd be curious to see if they're deciding that, like, the less productive parcels in their township are where they would allow solar.
Madam Chair, Commissioner Notch, I can answer that real quick. So it's just an area around the city.
Oh.
And I think they had worked with the city because the city really didn't want their land that was going to be annexed in the future to be in solar gardens,
Because they're looking at development.
Right.
future potential. So that was a cooperation between the city of Albany and the city, and then the Albany Township.
So for correction,
Commissioner
that
Hodge.
is the area where they won't allow anymore? Or where they will allow?
Where they will not,
Okay.
Correct.
So the
Where
city
they-
can annex land if they want to grow.
right.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
Interesting. Well, it's
Well,
good that
does
they're having
this-
the conversations. Sorry.
This, I used to get into the assessor's office more often, haven't been there for a long time. But if a property has been approved and has installed a solar garden, we talked about this and I forgot the discussion, what's the implication for property taxes?
Ms. Benson, I mean,
Madam Chair, Commissioner Lenzmeyer, we'll connect with Jake Pitty and ask for that information. It's changed, and it's
Yeah.
not my purview, and so I got to rely on him.
if
Yeah.
he could give us an email about that.
It's
it'd be
not
good to see.
critical, but
No, it would be good.
I am
It's a
curious.
good update. Did you have something else, Commissioner Notch?
Yeah,
And
just
I think the horse is starting to
Okay.
fail.
Well, and I was just going to add on to this taxation. So I did reach out on the last one in Zion Township, or the second one for the IUP. So I asked that question, and they said about $1,000 to the township for each of those 1 megawatts is what they had calculated would be the property, the additional revenue
Per year or
per year.
Okay.
Now, whether, I didn't verify that with Jake, but that's just what they calculated would be about $1,000 per 1 megawatt per year to the local entity.
Okay, well, it'll be good to get that information back. And Joe, I'm going to come back over to you. If we've got any other questions, now that we're giving you another list, we should email you or give you a ring. Commissioner Persky, anything else?
Yeah, I just wanted to request, that we get an update on the changes on the property tax and the production tax for those community solar gardens. In the past, it was anything at 1 meg or less was going to be zoned as agriculture, and they would be exempt from the production tax. And then we changed it so that if they did stack 2 megs on the same property, that would move to commercial. So basically doubled the property tax. And again, that might have changed with the legislation that has recently been passed. As far as Commissioner Lenzmeyer was asking about, using less productive farmland for these solar gardens, there's a tremendous incentive to rent the land out. Even, land renting out for ag that's maybe going for as much as $300 a year per acre. The solar gardens are getting somewhere to $1,500 to $2,500 per acre. And so it's extremely lucrative to rent out to the solar gardens. So, but anyway, I'll look for that information on the updates. Thank you.
Joe, thanks again for your work on that. It was good to see that get passed last year. So it would be good to get that information back to us. And certainly what we've heard is kind of generational ag producers trying to figure out how to diversify. And it's a little hard sometimes to tell exactly where their siting is, but they've made some decisions there. Okay, so thank you. Did you
Madam
have
Chair,
one more thing?
just bringing us back to why we're here. We're here because there was confusion at the last time we talked about an application of timelines associated with permits. And I know this kind of took a different direction, which is fine and good. We'll follow up with all of this, but we will have a public hearing in 2 weeks, and I don't want to discuss the merits of that today, but just as long as the commissioners understand that all of the past conditional use permits are not associated with the timeline, just so we don't have to rehash that at the
No,
public
that
hearing.
sounds good. And if you could please put that, make sure that's in our packet so the public can
Sure.
see that too. And it's a good reminder for us. If
Yeah.
you've got any questions about that ahead of time, you might need to send us another email. So very quickly on this topic, and then we're going to move on. Commissioner Persky or Commissioner Bertram, anything else?
Nope.
Okay. Commissioner Lenzmeyer or Commissioner Notch?
I've had enough.
Commissioner Lenzmeyer's word, the horse is dead.
Okay, all right. Well, thank you. We really appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
I mean, we definitely are trying to figure out how to make this work for lots of different factors. Okay, Human Services next. Ms. Huberty. Mr. Pooler. Welcome. This is an important issue for the public. We're going to be having a presentation, an update on regarding the public health emergency unwind and the impact on public assistance programs. So this stems from COVID. Welcome.
All right, good morning, Madam Chair and Commissioners. Melissa Huberty, I'm the Human Services Administrator. We have one Human Services regular agenda item, and it is item H1 on page 118. And as Commissioner Clark said, we're here to provide just information. We're about halfway through the public health emergency unwind, which we often reference as PHE, so that you know we're talking about the public health emergency unwind when we talk about that. We continue to see significant need across the system. We're going to provide an update on the overall process, the needs in the community, and what the future holds. So by way of a brief recap, all right, somebody's got control of that. By way of a brief recap, in March of 2020, we had the Families First Coronavirus Response Act, which added a continuous coverage requirement. And that meant that anyone that was on public assistance to have continuous coverage without having to verify or without our staff having to touch all of those cases. Nearly 3 years later, the Consolidated Appropriations Act of 2023 removed that requirement, which then meant that we had to change practice back to pre-COVID. And that meant that people who are receiving public assistance now have to do a lot of verification. And as you're going to hear today, throughout the programs, there's many programs, there's different requirements for each of those programs. So a lot of verification and a lot of staff touches. And we've talked before when we were here that we have I think roughly around 44,000 individuals on healthcare. We have over that total number of public health assistance recipients in Stearns County alone. So that was roughly about 1 in 4 people who live in Stearns County are utilizing public assistance services. So that volume, along with the back and forth it takes to go between staff and constituents, along with our antiquated systems, which we're going to talk a little bit about today, is what led the legislature to provide additional funding to add staff. So back in August of 2023, Mr. Pooler and I were here to discuss the additional funding that the legislature provided. And at that time, the board did approve 8 FTEs to add to the staff to help with this volume. So we're going to present some of that information and describe where we're at in the process. And so I will hand it over to Mr. Pooler.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Just kind of furthering some of our brief recap here, some data that we've brought to the board in the past. We did see a 38% increase in healthcare enrollees throughout the public health emergency. And in the year 2022, we had a 41% increase in all non-healthcare applications for public assistance programs. 2023 data is not completely compiled yet, but we're seeing that trend to continue to stay steady, if not a little bit higher. Moving into some of the current status of where we're at, as you can see with the previous slide, the work volume for the staff is substantial. The process is complex. Every family and individual situation is different, and just like all of ours. As you can imagine, if you don't have a car for transportation, it's hard to get to work. If you can't locate daycare, if you can't pay for daycare, that becomes a problem. Food insecurities, all of those scenarios, all while trying to manage a full-time job. We rely on a number of systems to do our work, and most of the state systems are archaic and in need of modernization. As an example, Maxis is one of our legacy systems. It's a DOS-based green screen with 71 individual pages, or panels as they're called, that eligibility data is entered into. And we have a number of these legacy systems that do not work well together, so there's a lot of touches in and out of systems by staff across the department.
So every time, Madam Chair, Commissioners, every time a staff member has to touch something in Maxis, like click, a panel opens up for them. Then they have to retype that information in a different tab. They have to click again, they have to click again, they click 73 times before they can just get through what should be more of a simplified process.
So, Ms. Huberty, I think it would be fair to say the slide that's being shown about systems archaic might be an understatement.
Yes.
It is a big time.
Well,
yes.
Yes, Madam Chair, as Melissa stated, clicking actually does not happen in Maxis. The system predates clicking. It's all.
Yes, I was going to say.
There's no click.
This has been around for decades.
Yeah, very little clicking. It's tabbing, and you have to know the 4-letter codes to get to the next panel, and it's very complicated. So, well,
pretty awful.
Old.
Thank you.
So, anyway, as we move to the next slide. I want to be respectful of time, but I want to briefly touch on some of the process and program complexity. The slide on the screen actually shows public assistance programs offered in Minnesota at a high level. Each one of these programs has an allowed processing period that the county has to adhere to as far as our being able to, the intake process of working with the client, getting the interview done, and processing the information. The time frame changes depending on which of these programs we're talking about. The processing periods may vary from same day to 60 days, including interview. Each one of these programs also has an independent set of rules and regulation the counties must adhere to. There are hundreds of pages of resources in many different locations across websites, OneNotes, different places, PDFs, that the staff utilize every day to ensure consistent process and equity for all clients. Clients also have a great deal of responsibility in this process. Within the rules and regulations, there are many verifications needed from clients to ensure that they are eligible for a program. During this stage of the process, there are numerous phone calls potentially needed to work with the client to ensure documentation is received. These inquiries contribute to delays in processing, and phone tag commonly occurs. I just want to give a quick example of some of the stuff that we chase around. Tying the antiquated system and rules together. Food support is a good example of something that we process.
Sorry, I'm getting the message. You got to be close.
Got
Go
it.
ahead.
Yep,
Thank
I
you.
apologize. Food support is a good example of a program that we process every day. Depending on the level of emergency, a person could qualify for a same-day interview. And this is a USDA federal rule with Minnesota twist applied to it. So staff attempts to call the clients. Many do not answer, which obviously is not surprising. I don't answer every call that comes in, and I don't know the number either to my cell phone. Staff then, by regulation, mark this as a missed interview. So client receives call, didn't answer call, we mark it as an missed interview in the system. The system then, so this would be Maxis that I referred to earlier, auto-generates a letter to go out in the mail overnight, telling the applicant that they missed their interview. So best case scenario, as an overnight process, they're going to have that letter in hand 2 to 3 days later. We, as staff, are required to repeat this process 3 days in a row. So at the end of this, it's very possible that we have finished our interview attempts, only then to have the client have letters that are coming in the mail telling them that they missed all of their interviews. Obviously, this can be very frustrating for everyone involved. Upon completion and approval of an application for benefits, there are also a number of post-eligibility requirements. Most of the requirements are for recertification and generally occur at intervals of 1 to 12 months, depending on the program. So some healthcare renewal challenges that we've seen. A couple of these challenges were stuff that we knew going into the unwind. The 27-page paper application that all renewals had to be filled out was something we knew about. And obviously we knew going in that we had a 38% increase of enrollees. Some things that have occurred throughout the process that we were not aware of. During the first few months of the PHE unwind, so public health emergency, we had many rule changes, often on a weekly basis. There was regular calls with DHS pretty much every Thursday and Friday, multiple groups meeting as those rules were changed. An example, early in the unwind process, different extensions were offered to different months of renewals. They were called cohorts. So basically, if you applied in July, you needed to renew in July. So those different cohorts of different extensions applied. This was due to software changes that needed to occur to be in compliance and other technical items so that we didn't have masses of people losing coverage. The extension periods changed multiple times throughout the first few months of the unwind.
And this also meant that, just to clarify, if you renewed your health care and you were supposed to in November, the rules that month were different than December of 2023. And in December, the rules changed, so they were different for January than it was for November and for December. And so staff and clients had to track this, and it became very confusing for everybody. And then, of course, that increases the volume of confusion, anxiety, and phone calls and walk-ins and all kinds of chaos.
Yeah, as Melissa stated, it definitely made it more difficult. Staff had to slow down and make sure that they were actually processing under the current and correct set of rules for that particular month. And obviously, clients get information to us when they get it to us. It doesn't necessarily mean it's going to fall in the correct month, so they had to stop and actually make sure that they were in that right time frame. Obviously, this made it very difficult for clients throughout this process. I called the just kidding letters. Clients would get a pre-renewal notice, 2 months early, and then they would get their renewal application, and then they would get a letter telling them when their closure date was, and then they would get another letter saying, just kidding, we extended you 30 or 90 days, depending on which set of rules you're in, and those would often come in multiple days in a row, again, auto-generated. So going back to some of the system issues we had, the software wasn't able to be changed fast enough to get ahead of some of the letters that were going out. So as you can imagine, this drove our phone call volume and office visits considerably higher as well. Cases that could have been normally straightforward had multiple steps added to complete the case. As an example there's a lot of system-generated letters that go out, but there's also county-generated letters that go out. One example would be we had to do additional mailings for certain medical assistance groups explaining that what the new rules were and that they weren't going to go into effect immediately, but that the time frame was going to be set date. So this made for a lot of extra processing time and case noting on every case that we touched. And many of these steps had to be done at a later time, which obviously then that creates more touches again. We did also reach out to the state to ask them to potentially come and present to the board on some of these topics. They were not against the idea, however, resources are tight. As of now, we did receive a PowerPoint presentation detailing their plans for software updates and the end of the PHE unwind.
All right, with that, as you can imagine, the lack of workforce in general has created difficulties in hiring. Mr. Pooler has posted for the positions that you approved back in August, and then multiple times since then. But I think 5 times you have posted, and as of about a week ago, we still have 13 vacancies in his division. So just the general workforce issues are just difficult. Even as we bring new staff on board, the training needs are just extremely vast. And when we do hire new people into the workforce, they can't believe the systems we're working in. So as he said, a click or 2 would be too much, 73 clicks would be bad, and having to re-enter nonsense into tabs is beyond comprehension for people who are of a certain age, younger than us, I guess I would say. But as the county and with the county and the state workforce shortages, we're just seeing longer delays generally. So besides it being extremely complex training, as we've hired new staff to even get access to the programs that are antiquated at the state, for a new staff member to get that, the delay is usually 30 to 60 days after they start. So you can imagine this just keeps kicking the delays further and further down the path and making it longer and longer. I don't think I need to reiterate that we need systems modernization. We've talked quite a bit about that. And it's also critical as a workforce retention issue. So we're still working on that. And then just generally, the work volume is very immense. All right. So I'm just going to quickly go over it's not last month anymore, but in January 2024, here's just a quick snapshot of what happened during just that month alone. The incoming phone calls were nearly 29,000. And in order for us to respond to every single phone call, we would need an army of staff to just simply be answering the phone and telling people you're okay. We just, your renewal is happening. We just, we have to do that. But that's an immense amount of volume coming in. We also did 1,625 interviews during that month. We processed well over 25,000 documents to get it into the system to even be able to have staff to look at it so that they can process the applications. And we served over 1,284 people at the Wade Park Service Center as walk-ins. And then also, just so you know, documents come to us in many different ways. They come through snail mail, the U.S. Postal Service, that can take longer. People drop things off. There's some electronic things. And so there's multiple places of tracking this and then having staff enter that into the systems. So we're at this point where we're at the halfway point of the public health emergency unwind. And so with a little bit of hope here, we can kind of talk about some things that we think are going to happen in the near future and kind of coming down the path here. The lion's share of all those phone calls and of the people walking in are people very anxious about their healthcare renewals. And as a general rule, actually, we've been keeping up on healthcare renewals, so that's positive. And if we're not keeping up on it, it hasn't been because county staff are just simply not doing something. As we explained, there's a lot in the system that happens that we have no control over, including that human beings aren't all super efficient with their paperwork. So, we're going back and forth. And when we call, the person might not be available. And then when they call us, we might be with somebody else. And so you can imagine that's just so antiquated to do it that way. And we've got to get to systems modernization. But healthcare renewals we have kept up with. And so people are anxious about it and they're calling about it. But in reality, people aren't losing their healthcare because county employees are just simply not doing their job. What's happening is we don't have the paperwork. we don't have something that we're supposed to have, or the paperwork came in late last night and the person actually thinks that we can actually turn that around and enact their healthcare this morning. And, you know, that we're getting all of this huge volume in every day. So we have to constantly triage which cases we're doing. However, we're keeping up on those things. The other good thing is that the rule changes have stabilized. Those rules we were talking about were weekly even or monthly, they were changing. That has stabilized. So that's helping us get over the hump. And also we are getting a new phone system is being implemented in the next couple of weeks. Partly what we're dealing with is with our public assistance staff, they're on the phone and the system that we have will pause, like we're trying to talk, but it won't let nobody talk for like 10 seconds. So what do people do when they hear nothing for 10 seconds? Click, they hang up. Now we're back in the phone tag, back and forth we go. So this should solve that problem, I'm thinking, right? So we think that'll solve it, and that will also help this greatly. And then we're also hoping to be fully staffed here in the next months. We are making some headway, and it just takes some time to get staff on and then to get them trained and to kind of move into it. But we're over the halfway point, and we think things are going to be better in the next weeks to months.
Yes, agreed. And Melissa did date herself a little bit by saying click and putting her hand
Yeah, I did do that again. They all nodded though. They were like, yes, that's terrible.
My granddaughter's pretend phone clicks. Doesn't that count?
I want to be as transparent as possible based on the trending need in the community. I mean, problems aren't going to go away with the healthcare renewals being done. Obviously, I think we'll be in a much better spot by this fall. But with the current cost of food and goods and transportation, the other programs are also at a very high level. So just going back to that 41% increase in applications, our due diligence is to process every application that comes through, and that 41% increase is still a large number. So those units that do that work are struggling to keep up as well. But hopefully, like I said, when healthcare subsides and goes back to normal business, we'll be able to move things around behind the scenes to make things subside a bit. And these trends are not Stearns County. They're in counties across the nation. I just want to make sure that that's clear as well. A couple things that we have done, we are texting clients. So I know I described that case of, an expedited food support where we're chasing them and they don't know that we are. So we have started texting clients. They can opt in when they do an electronic submission. About 80% of our current applications that come in for the other, some non-healthcare programs are electronic now, not paper. So as a person applies on their phone or their computer, they can actually opt in. So that texting has been happening for a couple months. I don't have data yet, but hopefully that'll help our no-show rates improve too. We're also well into the development of a document describing the complexities of our intake process and just in process in general that we will distribute to the commissioners when we get it finished up. So just so you can have like the high level overview of what it is that's happening for, everybody's at a different stage of, how much interaction they've had with that. So for the most part, it does still work to send people directly to us. So if, clients are reaching out and constituents are reaching out, obviously you guys know how to find us, and please feel free to continue to do that. And lastly, I guess for closing, I just want to say that we have a tremendous group of people working for us, truly. People are voluntarily working overtime. They're doing a lot to help each other. The different units in my division are working together as something boils over. They stop what they're doing to help each other. And they do care that we're not able to keep up with the phone calls and callbacks. It bothers them, probably not as much as it bothers the clients, but it does bother them a lot. So the fact that we're not able to keep up with the volume matching our capacity is not because they don't care. So I just wanted to.
Yeah, and I'll just add, I can't say enough about the staff in this area. The morale is actually, Mr. Pooler and his staff have really worked to keep morale up. As you know, people coming, applying for public assistance aren't often having their best day in their life. And sometimes it's very intense behaviors the staff is dealing with, that people very anxious, maybe very angry, very whatever, as we discussed in the Criminal Justice Coordinating Committee this morning. People aren't always at their best when they're having all of these struggles. And the staff have consistently, all the time, every day, dealt with every constituent in a way in an extremely professional manner. I've seen it many, many, many times, and I can't thank them enough for that. So with that, we're available for questions.
Great. Questions or comments?
I had to wait until the end, but you finally got around to explaining that you get a number of these interfaces electronically to the extent possible that I don't know, I'm not a techno geek, but to the extent possible, if we can somehow expand that access, would be another service option. So and I don't know enough about it to make an intelligent observation. You'll have to put up with my typical dumb ones. So, but if we can, there's a way to expand that. I mean, we're having, for what it's worth, this isn't just about public health or human services. I'm on the library board, same issue. So if you can solve that puzzle, you'll be helping a lot of folks. But I'll tell the library folks the same thing. So well, that's where the world's going. You know, in my tenure in my career, I'll miss some of that party.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner.
And Madam Chair and Commissioner Lenzmeyer, I do just want to address I appreciate the input. When we, and as my staff will attest, when we came into the building and are having walk-in clients that maybe have a potential gap in need, that I really changed the workflow of what they used to do in the office and really try to handhold as much as possible. We have iPads in the Family Services Hub. We are connecting to interpreters via video. We try our best to steer people away from the paper application and help them fill it out.
Yeah.
Help them fill it out on the iPad, have them pull it up on their phone at the same time. It's all the same website. It's, I say device agnostic. MN Benefits works on all devices. So we try to really slow down the process when people come in and actually make sure that we're handholding and teaching them to do it that way. Because like I said, a lot of people are unaware. I've mentioned to a lot of people and joked about them in the hallway, like, you don't ever have to come back here. You can do it this way. And they're very appreciative. So I agree. We're definitely moving that way and we're trying to educate as much as possible.
Oh, thank you. I've been hearing complaints about people that want to use let's call it the old service model, and they're frustrated they can't do it. Well, you know, I let them know that there's another way to do that, and whether they're interested or willing to adopt that mode of access to the system, it's up to them. But I'm encouraged that at least, if we'd had this conversation just a few years ago, you wouldn't have brought it up, you know. So I'm encouraged, and it's another tool. And yeah, I mean, they don't come to us for issues in their life unless it's a problem. So by the time they get to us, they're pretty wound up. But thanks. Keep working on that.
Commissioner Persky or Commissioner Bertram, do you have anything?
Madam Chair, thank you. A couple of quick things. Melissa, you and I have talked about motivating the staff. Of course, we were in St. Paul a week ago, and you brought up some of those issues with the legislators, but I really do think we need to continue to work with AMC and the legislature to get the state staff on board with this stuff and to get them motivated to help counties, because as you say, so much of this isn't at our discretion, and we really need to motivate them. So that's just a reiteration of what we've talked about. The in-person, there's just some people that are going to need to have in-person visits. And what's your plan, Melissa, on getting more staff in offices and allowing more staff to have the one-on-ones, at least, if nothing else, initially?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Bertram, anyone can walk in this service center at this time and get that hand-holding, as we've discussed. We've been doing quite a bit of it. So we have staff in there all the time, full-time. They're there all the time. Anyone can walk in. What we try to say, though, is we're trying to teach people, though, how to do it online, because it really, it's more efficient for them to do it online. But I hear you, there's going to be a subset that want to be in person, and we can handle that out at the service center. For the most part, though, as Mr. Pooler said, it doesn't matter what age you are. When we teach people, we slow it down, we teach people, almost everybody wants to go back. They want to go and do it themselves, almost everybody. And I don't know, so we can
Ms.
handle.
Huberty, I'm guessing there's some people who then want to do it themselves but have questions. And do they
Correct.
call in or do they come back? I mean, they have the opportunity to come back if they haven't quite figured it out.
Correct. That is correct. They can.
Okay.
And Madam Chair, Melissa, the first, it may take the first visit in person to help them explain how they can do it, and then they'll do it electronically beyond that. But you and I have traded, instances where that first visit was important. And
Yes.
and then the other thing
Commissioner
is,
Bertram, real quick, there are people who don't want it in person. So I think
what do
what's
you
the
do?
important takeaway is that some people want it in person and some people don't. And our staff is trying to accommodate both.
That's
and
correct.
that's a goal. Yep, that's a goal. Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Melissa. And then the timeliness, obviously, of some of the issues that you and I have dealt with, Melissa, and your staff has done an excellent job. And I've even gotten, as you know, last week, a letter from a person who couldn't do anything technical, email or anything else, literally wrote a letter, and I shared it with Melissa, recognizing the staff person. Wonderful, so that is happening. But a lot of these issues, as you well know, are very, very timely healthcare. They're having a baby or cancer or whatever. And obviously that's when the urgency really goes through, because they've been notified they don't have coverage. And of course, again, your staff has done a wonderful job. So just keep up the connect with the public and providing the services. You're certainly doing a great job, and we just need to continue to work together.
Thank you.
Commissioner Persky, did you have anything else?
Yes, I just want to comment to the appreciation of staff. I know they're doing a tremendous job. We've got great people working with the community, and we want that to continue. It's disheartening that we are understaffed, and the positions that we do have opening, because we do know there are more people out there, as Commissioner Bertram mentioned, that are perhaps lower functioning as far as their ability to process paperwork and that such, and they do need that helping hand when they come through the door, if they can come through the door. So hopefully we can continue to give opportunities for those people to be reached out to, and continue to help them with the needs that they have. So thank you, Melissa. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
And thank you both. And please, I know some staff are listening, but if you can please go back and give them all of our sincere appreciation. You've given us a snapshot of how mind-blowing it is about what's expected. People have really changed. I mean, so much has changed in the last few years. And then this constant changing, mostly from the feds, the state not necessarily helping, and people having different needs. And then your staff being out in community, available in person, available online. The texting piece is going to be really interesting to hear how that goes. Further on, because there's been some other situations where that can be really helpful. So please thank them. Keep letting us know about what else you're seeing, and knowing how stressful this is for staff. It's really good to hear that morale's in a pretty good place. And as somebody who used to represent the people coming to your staff, our staff, I know how hard this is right now to juggle. So the communication that's going on with some of our community organizations, so they have a better idea and can help people as well, is a really good thing. So thank you for that. You did have something after Commissioner Notch.
So yesterday, the Minnesota Rural Counties had their meeting. So a couple of senators were on, and a representative, and Senator John Hoffman was on. And it was interesting how he made the comment that these departments cannot get together to solve this. You got DHS on one side and Department of Health, and they can't get together to get this solved. He said it's just so frustrating to be there, and you can't get these groups to get it together, to get the computer stuff, to get this stuff fixed. It's kind of interesting to hear how frustrated he was as a senator.
And actually, Senator Hoffman's done a lot of work trying to better understand what's happening with counties. So that's been a good thing for all of us. He's actually been a good conduit back there. Any last words, you two? Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you
It's
so much.
underappreciated, the volume of of
good point.
questions you get. In addition, the sheriff can certainly relate to the volume issue. It's remarkable that sometimes that even with the volume of your department, his department, that we're as effective as we are. So,
Good point.
you know, you're not the only people suffering.
Yeah, very good point. Yes, it was hard not to be thinking about dispatch as you were
Yes.
talking about calls.
Yeah.
Well, thank
All right.
you.
Thank
And-
you.
Thank you. And with that, we're going to take a brief recess. So I'm going to just do that so the back can hear. We'll be back in just a few minutes.
You're a mind reader. Thank you.
All right. Well, welcome back. Ms. Tyke, we're on to Public Works. You've got a couple items, maybe some miscellaneous. You never know with you.
Good morning, Commissioners. Jody Tyke, County Engineer. My first agenda item, J1, starts on page 119 of your agenda packet. I'm asking the board to adopt a resolution authorizing eminent domain proceedings related to SAP 073669-003, and that's our County Road 69 reconstruction between the South County line and Trunk Highway 55. And the board has already authorized advertising for bids at its February 6th board meeting. We have gotten all signatures on all parcels. We're waiting to make final payment on one parcel because a property owner is deceased, and the person who signed, we need that paperwork showing that they're authorized to sign on behalf of the estate. And so in talking with our legal counsel that we work with quite a bit on our eminent domain, he felt this would be the fastest way to get that authorization so we could make payment to that property owner.
Okay. Any questions or a motion?
I'd move that.
Thank you, Commissioner Lensmeyer.
I'll second that, Madam Chair.
All right, thank you, Commissioner Notch. Anybody with any questions, comments? Commissioner Bertram, did you have anything? Are you good? Okay. We'll just make sure for the record, Commissioner Persky needed to go, so he will not be part of our roll call anyways. But I think we're ready to go ahead and take that vote.
Okay, Commissioner Notch,
Aye.
Commissioner Bertram,
Aye.
Commissioner Lensmeyer,
Aye.
and Madam Chair.
Aye.
Thank you. So for my next item, I have another resolution authorizing eminent domain proceedings. This is related to SAP 073612-023. That's our County Road 12 reconstruction between County Road 111 and the southeast limits of the city of St. Martin. Earlier today in the consent agenda, the board authorized advertising for bids for that project. So we needed to buy property from 42 parcels, and 38 of those 42 have signed off and been paid. One property owner owns 4 separate parcels, and those remain unsigned. We are at the point in negotiations where it's certainly a financial disagreement, or I guess we're pretty far apart financially. So we will continue to attempt to negotiate with this property owner, but in order to keep the project on schedule, we're asking the board to authorize eminent domain by adopting the resolution on page 124 of your packets.
So moved, Madam Chair.
Okay, we have a motion by
Second.
Commissioner Notch, a second by Commissioner Lensmeyer. Any discussion? Seeing none, please take the roll.
Okay, we'll start with Commissioner Bertram,
Aye.
Commissioner Lensmeyer,
Aye.
Commissioner Notch,
Aye.
and Madam Chair.
Aye.
Thank you. I have no miscellaneous items unless the board has anything for me.
Board members, anything?
Madam Chair,
Yes, Commissioner Bertram.
just want to compliment Jody and her staff for an excellent public meeting in Lake Henry the other night on the County Road 32 and Minnesota State Highway 4 interchange update in 2026. Great attendance to the meeting. The staff, Jeff and Mike and Jody and others all did a great job of answering the questions, and interactions like that go a long way in creating a positive public feeling towards projects, and she did a great job, and I just want to thank her for that.
I figured either you or Commissioner Notch was going to bring that up. I know that it sounded like it was a great meeting and maybe quite as full, or maybe even more so than some of the Town Line Road ones have been. So I guess just to reinforce how much it's appreciated, your staff has really been having to go above and beyond in the last several months with making sure the communities are good with it. Commissioner Notch.
It probably would have been good to have it next door.
Yeah. We did have discussions about the Sportsman's Den having larger accommodations, but it was bingo night and we were a little concerned about the noise level. So it was standing room only, and that's always great to see. There was a huge interest in the project, so we were really happy with the turnout.
It's great. And do you want to say anything about Transportation Day on the Hill coming up?
So yes, next week on March 13th, Commissioner Lenzmeyer, Commissioner Clark, and I are going down to Transportation Alliance Transportation Day at the Capitol. So we will be down in St. Paul visiting with our legislators about our key transportation platform issues, mainly bonding, the local road wetland replacement program. Those will kind of be our key focus for our discussions with our legislators.
Thank you for the work on that, too. Appreciate that. Well, thank you.
All right, thank you.
So was there anything else? I don't see anything. Okay, great. So that moves us to issues by commissioners. I don't know if you have anything, Commissioner Bertram. We wanted you to be able to
I do not.
get back to family. Commissioner Lenzmeyer, do you have anything?
Yeah.
What do you got?
I hadn't warmed this particular seat before, but what I do like is the ability to see the screen. In this, the seat at the end of the dais, I'm virtually out of sight. I do look at the way the screen is attached to the wall, and I think it could be tilted out a little more, because if we could get the edge of it right to the corner of the wall, that would be very helpful. Well, I hope it would be very helpful, because where I'm at is blind. So that's the only observation in terms of the physical aspect of this that I have to offer. Also, a week ago yesterday, on behalf of the Great River Regional Library, we did our visit to the legislature, and what I learned is I'm in line for one of those canes that has the 4 prongs on the bottom, because while some of the grand stairwells down there are certainly very elegant looking, I can't get up the damn thing. So that was educational. Plus, we had some great interfaces with legislators. And then my last note, Jody covered, talking about transportation in this upcoming visit. So thanks a lot. I'm pretty well. I need a map to Padua Pub so I can go to this. What is it? The drainage seminars. I haven't made one yet, and that used to be my forte. Keith Maurer got me involved in that on behalf of the county before I was elected. So I need those items. So a map to Padua Pub.
It looks like staff's already on that, because it's good to know where those things are. And thank goodness there are working elevators at the Capitol, or else it'd be a real problem, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, the group I was with kept losing me. Yeah.
Okay.
Maybe that was wishful thinking.
Commissioner Nutt.
Just a clarification, isn't that Greenwald Pub?
Yeah.
You said Padua.
Oh, I screwed up.
It's important to know which one and where. That
Yeah.
is for sure.
Owned by the same family group, but
Yeah.
different locations.
Yes.
Yeah, thanks a lot,
Then you don't
Steve.
have to go so far. Not quite
That's
as far.
good. That's good. Commissioner Notch.
I just want to make a comment. Yesterday was Minnesota Rural Counties meeting.
Yeah.
And they had a couple senators and a representative, just going over the vast volume of, over 1,500 bills are out there. And it's like, there's no way possible they can even be close to one senator or rep reading 100 of them, much less 15 or 1,600. But the conversation kind of went a little off to the side on, some of the non-necessarily county issues, whether it's the flag or Second Amendment. And it was the interesting comments that were made by, a couple of the senators and reps was there. one in particular felt it was okay if the county did resolutions to these, but in the same aspect, the leaders of Minnesota rural counties, as well as what they feel other lobbyists are, the lane is whatever the county affects the county. In order for them to keep credibility, it has to stay with
Stay in their
what
own
they can
lane.
deal with. And you know, he said, I understand, you know, what some of the issues are and what you want, but he says, you have to remember, if we're gonna have any credibility with
Yeah.
legislators, we have to stay in our lane.
Stay in,
Which,
huh?
you know, it was kind of a good conversation.
Yes.
With a lot of, you know, it's a lot of smaller counties and there's a lot of drainage issues. A lot of these House representatives and senators are working on different aspects, and they're like, you have to remember, if we upset the apple cart on something non-relevant, we might lose a drainage issue that's important to everybody, or, you know, because it was an interesting conversation. I think a lot of county commissioners that were there kind of appreciated the dialogue, and not that they're happy. I mean, they want to be able to react if something comes up, but it was an interesting dialogue, you know, on, you know, and it's actually a couple of the senators said, well, one in particular said, you know, if your county wants to do a resolution, you know, that's fine. It probably adds some credibility, but we have to kind of stay in our, we're going to focus on the area we can focus on.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, okay, that makes sense. I mean, a lot of us think some of these things are important, which they are. And it was an interesting conversation to kind of say, you know, we have to follow this path. Otherwise, we're going to become non-relevant.
That's right.
Right. Thank you. Anything else?
Crow Wing County is, in my opinion, a big violator of that. They've got opinions on everything.
Anything else?
Nope, I think
Okay.
for right now, that's it.
Mike, I meant to ask you first. Anything that you want to make sure gets communicated?
Yeah, a few things actually this time. Just as after 9 o'clock this morning, I had an email from our election supervisor, and she's saying that, you know, all the cities tested their equipment as they are supposed to, and they haven't had any issues this morning. And I even followed up with, are you sure? And she's like, yeah, they haven't had any issues this morning. So I'm not sure what was going on with the speaker this morning and her experience, but if I hear anything different, of course, I'll let you know. And by another item by way of schedule, we are going to plan to have a work session after the meeting on March 19th, devoted to the Jail and Justice Center. We are trying to we need to schedule a meeting with the township officers. That looks like best to occur after your meeting on April 2nd, in anticipation of their semi-annual meeting occurring on April 18th. And then at your meeting on April 16th, I think we'll hopefully have action for you to take on to authorize the architects to move forward further into design. So I'm not sure if we'll do that in a work session format. Probably that would be likely. So you're looking at some meetings after meetings in the next few meetings.
April 18th on the township offices.
Yeah, that at their evening meeting, yes.
And then
And then
we meet on the 2nd with them. Is that accurate? We meet with them on the 2nd?
That's what we're planning to do, is meet with them after the board meeting like we typically have.
And Dr. Williams will get emails.
Yes,
and
I'll
calendar
email all
invites
this
about
to
all
you, but I
this.
just wanted to mention.
Well, this
Good for the
will
public to hear.
make things interesting for those of us that represent areas of the city of St. Cloud, because that's when I was planning on going to their 12:30 State of the City address, to the extent that I try to keep up with what they're doing over there, but I don't know. How can we make it work?
Well, we may be able to be done in time for that.
That'd be remarkable. It's 12:30 is when they.
Anything else, Dr. Williams?
One more thing, I want to share some good news that I just received. I'm sorry, I'm not at my microphone. Sheriff, some good news that just came in while we were meeting, and that is that our 2 applications for broadband, the border-to-border applications were both approved. So if you can see, remind you here, this was a large area here, all of this with the hash marked here in partnership with Albany Mutual Telco. That was approved. And then this area up here in Ashley and Sauk Center Township, and then this area Zion Township in partnership with Arbig were both approved. You also, during that process, approved a letter of support for a few. Midco was doing a project mostly in Chisago and Anoka counties, I think, and there was like 11 in Stearns County, 11 parcels. I believe that was also approved, and so we're on our way to having those 2 last fill-in projects that we talked about at this time, which was here, this eastern part of Luxembourg, eastern part of Wakefield, and then Paynesville Township. So actually great news. I mean, that's over $10 million in border grants that we just got word of today.
That's great. That is fabulous. And you even partially have the map updated. So this is great. And actually, I'm going to get to be on a panel in a couple weeks on, there's another one of the state internet trainings, whatever. And the panel is called 100%. And it was like, well, we get there. This is very good news. And I think the state actually knew when they reached out that, well, they couldn't tell us yet that we were going to get approved. So thanks again for your and everybody else's work on this. It's a big deal. It'll be good to see kind of how the numbers keep adding up, and especially with getting that state and federal funds. It's a big deal. Thank you for that. I guess going for me, a couple of things. This actually goes back to the crazy amount of bills. Thankful that we do have our associations that work with us on a number of our issues. Just to use one of the issues that certainly impacts us, I'm looking at Sheriff Soika. It relates to our jail, among other things, is the people who are languishing in our jails are emergency departments that really need to be in a state hospital getting forensic treatment and or that could use a community placement that's secure and meets their needs. In the House alone, they are planning like 4 committee hearings in the next week, and based on where they need to go, they must have a bunch of clone bills because they can't actually do this without pushing the papers the way they are. My concern would be this is a bill that isn't yet ready, and they're going to be using the same bill while we're working to make sure that the language that ultimately gets passed works for counties, works for people, works for our communities. But because they've got such a short time, in addition to all those bills, they're all trying to get through multiple places. And when I look at it, Commissioner Bertram, I was thinking about you. I look at it, it's like, I don't even know why they're going to try to go to this many committees. They don't need to. So it's kind of a crazy dance. Important to keep going and talking to members and for the public. If you've got issues that you're concerned about, we encourage you to do that as well. And with that, we are adjourned.